Pathways: The Benefits and Drawbacks of Heterogeneous Groups, a case study comparison by Reagan Weeks and Michael Shaka. This presentation is a summary of a case study comparison paper. The green case study document link will take you to the paper where details of the case study can be found. The presentation agenda includes overview, theoretical framework, a summary of case study 1, career technical education, a summary of case study 2, Mennonite students, and program creation evaluation recommendations. The following case studies explore the conundrum of providing tailored programming targeting unique student profiles without sacrificing the benefits of heterogeneous student grouping. The case study comparison examines both the drawbacks of homogeneous grouping through the study of CTE ability tracking and the benefits specialized program grouping through the study of German Mennonite immersion programs. The context for students enrolled in these unique programming opportunities differs significantly. However, both attempt to optimize learning for homogeneous student profiles through targeted interventions. The two studies appear contradictory, both presenting strong evidence for the argument either for or against student grouping programs. However, a detailed examination of each study identifies common themes to consider when designing and evaluating a program at school. Patterns emerge which identify effective approaches to avoiding many of the negative outcomes of ability grouping when designing a homogeneous student program. The case study comparison concludes with recommended questions program designers and evaluators should consider when examining the effectiveness of specialized programs. The theoretical framework opportunity to learn influences how we view education and the way it can be used to help achieve our division educational goals. Additive to curriculum, exposure to content, experiences, and personnel training are not enough to ensure students experience equity. Rather, equity is realized by similar capacities for action. This concept is further supported by Gay 2000, who discusses increasing academic achievement by teaching students through the lens of their own culture. As a result, students have the opportunity to intellectually engage from a position of strength. Thus, when the students achieve educational outcomes, regardless of the culture, racial, or economic groups they identify with, equal opportunity to learn has been realized. Those advocating for specialized programming to address unique needs argue more equitable learning outcomes are achieved due to the targeted approach. Educational equity is a measurement of fairness and inclusion between both individual students and student groups. Fairness addresses the degree to which factors such as gender, race, socioeconomic status influence the achievement of academic potential, while inclusion creates a baseline of minimum skill acquisition. A large body of research exists addressing the educational inequities of minority students, students from low socioeconomic households, and students with disabilities. The conversations surrounding educational inequity generally focus on the advantages of higher achieving students from affluent ethnic majority backgrounds have over lower achieving students from less affluent minority backgrounds. In response to the educational inequities inherent in our school system, specialized programs have been created for a myriad of unique student needs. These programs attempt to level the playing field for disadvantaged students by creating support systems, focusing resources, and targeting specific need. Career technical education classes are courses in which curriculum is focused on skills designed to prepare students for specific career fields. Historically, high school CTE classes have been designed to create value for lower achieving students who lack the academic skill to succeed in college. CTE programs were used to separate higher achieving and lower achieving students into ability tracks early in high school in order to prepare students for their likely career options. This separation of students resulted in both positive and negative outcomes for each ability level. The impact of this separation can be organized into two categories. They are the effects on curriculum and the differences in learning environment. The distinctions between tracks are reflected in the focus on theory-based curriculum within the college-bound track, as opposed to a focus on particular labor applications within the vocational track. The learning environment influences the prominent cognitive strategies and likely classroom experiences of students in each track. The effects of ability tracking on student learning and the prominence of situated cognition provide a framework in which to examine CTE class benefits and drawbacks for higher and lower achieving students. This study examines the salient factors contributing to the course selection trends of higher achieving students in career technical education. While a lack of empirical evidence exists directly addressing the value of CTE classes for higher achieving students, multiple studies examine tracking, future earnings, standardized test scores, grade point averages, and cognitive theory, which suggest benefits for higher achieving students in CTE classes. In a local school district in Southern California, the perceived value of CTE classes varies significantly between higher achieving students and lower achieving student populations. Additionally, the identity of these classes from the perspective of teachers, parents, guidance counselors, and peers have considerable impact on course recommendation for low, middle, and higher achieving students. An intervention was implemented which redesigned CTE courses in a pilot high school to fit the International Baccalaureate framework and rebrand the classes in order to attract more high-achieving students into the CTE pathways. The research in the literature review indicates a strong disconnect between the perceived identity of CTE classes and what is actually taking place in the classroom. CTE programs are still struggling to shed the former stigma of vocational education and therefore are not attracting large numbers of higher achieving students. Although there is a comprehensive foundation of research addressing the effects of CTE courses on lower achieving students, empirical data is scarce regarding the impact of CTE courses on higher achieving students. The research that does exist is mixed and does not agree on the effects of CTE classes on college admissions, academic success, and future earnings for the higher achieving students. In order to increase the number of higher achieving students enrolling in CTE classes, two obstacles must be addressed. The first is that clear benefits of CTE classes for higher achieving students must be established. Secondly, their benefits must be effectively conveyed to guidance counselors, teachers, parents, and students. The research in this study suggests that attracting higher achieving students into CTE classes will have a mutually beneficial effect on both higher achieving and lower achieving students. Carroll, Fulton, and West examine the effects of heterogeneous ability groups within classrooms and find that performance of both groups of students increases in a mixed ability setting. In addition, higher achieving students tend to come from more affluent households, which bring an increased level of advocation and tangible resources into CTE classrooms from higher achieving parents. These, this increase in support would not exist for lower achieving students in the absence of higher achieving students in CTE classes. This potential shared interest often goes unrealized in school district due to the belief that there is only a zero-sum outcome solution, and a benefit for a lower achieving student would mean a negative outcome for a higher achieving student. This win-win scenario further strengthens the importance of attracting higher achieving students into CTE programs. The intervention used a quasi-experimental mixed-method research design, which incorporated both quantitative data collection through the enrollment numbers, surveys, and college acceptance rates, and qualitative data collection through student, counselor, and teacher interviews. By utilizing this mixed methods approach, the research team gained a comprehensive understanding of the perceived value of CTE classes, barriers that steer various student populations away from the classes, and the benefits and drawbacks of CTE course selections for high, middle, and lower achieving students. Research questions have been designed to define the scope and reach of the research and determine the effects, if any, of the intervention. The overriding purpose of this study was to examine the factors contributing to course selection patterns of CTE classes for various student populations. The following research questions were asked to guide the research. Research question 1. To what extent does the CTE course rebranding and redesign to meet international baccalaureate standards have a positive effect on the enrollment and attrition of high, middle, and low achieving students? And research question 2, how does an increase in higher achieving student enrollment affect the middle and lower achieving student enrollment and attrition patterns in the class? Findings. The pre and post intervention GPA data indicates a significant difference in mean GPA for the treatment site. The mean GPA increased from 2.48 grade point average to a 3.69 grade point average, indicating a 1.2 increase post intervention. This increase suggests that the intervention was successful in its attempt to attract more high achieving students into the IB business class. The percentage of students with above a 3.5 grade point average increased at the treatment site from 25% pre-intervention to 65% post-intervention, indicating an influx in higher achieving students into the program. GPA data was also collected at the two comparison sites in order to identify CTE enrollment patterns at the district, state, and national level, and cannot be attributed to intervention. Longitudinal GPA at the two comparison sites was analyzed. An increase in GPA for students was detected on both sites. However, the increased average GPA post-intervention at treatment site 1 and treatment site 2 were 0.19 and 0.39 respectively. This data indicates that while students' GPAs in CTE classes are trending upwards due to other factors, the GPA increase at the treatment site was more than 3 times larger than the comparison sites. The difference in GPA growth between the treatment site and the comparison sites suggests that the intervention had a positive impact on the number of high-achieving students enrolling in the CTE pathway. The findings of research question 2. A primary concern when implementing the intervention was the possibility of higher achieving students replacing middle and lower achieving students, in essence, pushing them out of the pathway. The intervention data indicates that while the percentage of middle and lower achieving students within the pathway decreased, the number of these students remained similar. 16 students post-intervention had a grade point average below 3.5, while an average of 18 students pre-intervention had a grade point average below 3.5 each semester. The range total of number of students with below a 3.5 grade point average ranged between 15 and 20 students over the 4 semesters prior to the intervention. The 16 students with below 3.5 grade point average enrolled in the class post-intervention falls within the pre-intervention range and does not deviate from what would have been expected without the implementation of the intervention. Interview and survey data was collected to identify qualitative measures affecting enrollment patterns. Student surveys indicate and interview responses identify perceptions of high rigor in the IB business management class compared to the other elective offerings at school. A recurring theme for middle and lower achieving students enrolled in IB business management was the perception that the class was more rigorous and carried a larger workload than most of their other classes. However, these same students indicated that this perception of heightened rigor did not affect their decision to enroll and remain in the class. The most dominant theme emerging from the student surveys and interview responses was the strong belief that IB business management would be valuable to the future plans regarding both college and career. 92% of student responses indicated middle and lower achieving students perceived the class as both highly relevant and highly valuable for their future goals. When combined with enrollment data, these responses indicate a continued interest in the redesigned class and that the perception of heightened rigor did not have a deterring effect of middle and lower achieving students. Counselor interview data at the treatment site revealed a belief that the redesigned business class would no longer be a viable option for the lowest achieving students at the school. Prior to the course redesign, the CTE business course was used as a safe haven for very low achieving students. Counselors would sometimes enroll these students in the class, believing they had a high likelihood of passing the class. Counselors indicated that the lower rigor and light workload made the class appealing for seniors who were in danger of not graduating. The CTE business class was not considered a dumping ground class in which high numbers of low achieving kids were enrolled, but it was occasionally used for lower achieving students. After the course redesign, counselors were no longer comfortable enrolling extremely low achieving students in the class, citing the increased rigor and workload.
Southern Alberta has experienced an influx of Low German-speaking Mennonites migrating to the area, primarily to work in agriculture. The culture is traditional in nature and has strong religious affiliations. Community leaders have expressed concern with LGM students attending public schools related to immersion in Western culture. Many families were choosing to homeschool their children prior to 2013, which was challenging given most parents were not fluent in English, and the type of Low German they speak does not have written language. Most LGM students spend large portions of their childhood outside of the school system, migrating between Mexico and Canada. Consequently, age and grade may not align typically. As a result, the Huron-View School Division has responded to the unique needs of this distinct cultural group by creating 3 public schools with over 99% of their student body from the LGM community, from kindergarten to grade 9. The intent is to provide a supportive environment that builds trust with the parents and community during these grades so students, families, and the LGM community are prepared for re-entry into the heterogeneous high school system. This group of students has designated community liaison workers whose role is to connect families to schools and to provide cultural insight to division personnel. The LGM schools have hired German instructors to teach religion for 30 minutes daily under the supervision of provincially certified teachers. All other programming follows the Alberta education curriculum. The schools are culturally homogeneous, with teachers committed to building connections with the LGM community by engaging leaders and working with parents. Gay discusses the increase in academic achievement as a result of teaching students through the lens of their own culture, which provides students opportunities to intellectually engage from a position of strength. Academic gains have been realized for LGM students within this profile, including a reduced dropout rate, improved test scores. The latest data release exceeds the provincial average in grades 6 and 9 for English, mathematics, science, and social studies. The following case study explores a classroom that has exemplified this success, partially attributed to the implementation of parent-teacher academic teams. Parent-teacher academic teams, or PTAT, modeled after Peretti's 2011 work, was the intervention implemented to form a partnership between families and the school in order to improve student engagement. PTAT are designed to assist the school, parents, and students in collaboratively improving emotional, behavioral, and cognitive engagement, as well as assist in mitigating socioeconomic status disparities. PTATs require the participation and involvement of 3 distinct groups, including the teacher, parents, and students. Each stakeholder group's interest must connect to the larger common goal of advancing students' educational outcomes. However, the teacher has the task of engaging both parent and student participation in the intervention. The role of the teacher involved program delivery of all 4 components of the intervention to parents and students, including communication, academic data, strategies for action, and learning in the home. It was predicted that teachers will invest time and effort in the implementation of the intervention due to the anticipated outcomes of increased behavioral, emotional, and cognitive engagement, as well as increased parent involvement. The role of parents in the implementation of PTAT included participating in the 4 program components, thereby increasing involvement in school programming, positively influencing student achievement. The intervention aimed to provide parents with data-supported evidence that PTAT addresses the problem of low levels of behavioral, emotional, and cognitive engagement. Meaningful data collection required parents to engage in the initiative despite barriers to involvement, such as context variables, sense of efficacy, and parent perceptions of invitations for involvement. Further, power imbalances between parents and other stakeholders were considered to limit bias. Students who participated in PTAT provided quantitative data on their level of engagement and their perceptions of parent involvement pre and post intervention. The 4 intervention pathways included in PTAT are discussed further below. The first, communications. ABLE, 2012, found invitations for involvement in schools significantly contributed to parent involvement. Specifically, the way teachers communicated influenced fathers' responses to home-based school-related requests. Further, parents from low socioeconomic backgrounds have perceived poor communication and a lack of empathy from school personnel as a barrier to academic involvement. In order to prevent this implementation problem, the participating teacher received training in communication skills from the primary researcher. Personal parent invitations were crafted by teacher participants and collected by the researcher. The invitations were written in a manner that was reflective of the training to regard parents as equal partners who have valuable knowledge and expertise that can inform student learning experiences. Given the varied reading and educational levels of parents, an invitation was reviewed collaboratively with the participating teacher to ensure they portrayed a contextual understanding of the unique needs of individual families. The primary researcher used a checklist to ensure the objective of multi-directional communication and expertise was recognized in the personal invitations. After 30 days, the teacher and parents connected either through email, phone, or in writing to check on the progress and adjust if needed. The teacher used a communication recording sheet created by the researcher to indicate when the check-in occurred between the school and home. The method for the check-in was considerate of contextual needs and was determined at the same time the personal invitation was crafted. The communication recording sheet included suggested alternate forms of communication if the teacher had difficulty reaching a particular parent, as well as the contact information for the family school liaison worker. The family school liaison role includes helping teachers communicate with parents. Further, teachers were asked to notify the primary researcher if this barrier persisted. Academic data sharing. A class meeting took place in October 2016 with students, parents, the teacher, and service providers to review academic data of all students. In the group meeting, students and parents received detailed information about the outcomes and performance data of the class. Following the class meeting, each family received a ticket for a come-and-go dinner that was provided by the school. Families had access to the school library, student work was showcased in hallways, and community service providers had information displayed, while parents waited for the individually scheduled meeting. Duplicate meetings took place on 2 consecutive evenings, and parents attended the one that aligned best with their schedule. Parents and students attended scheduled individual meetings the same evening, or, if needed, at another time of mutual convenience. During this time, confidential performance data was discussed to ensure a clear understanding of current achievement, and the strategies for action were identified. The teacher recorded attendance in the class and individual meetings. Childcare was provided by the parent council during this time for siblings to prevent distraction. Strategies for action. In an individual 15-minute meeting, parents, the teacher, and student collaboratively set a 60-day learning goal. The underlying process of parent-teacher collaboration led to increased parent involvement. Additionally, the parents and the teacher identified 2 strategies to work with their child at home. They practiced as a team to ensure fluency with the strategies, and the school provided all needed materials at no cost to the family. Further, teachers used a strategies for action recording sheet to note the selected approaches. This provided information associated with adherence and participant responsiveness to the program. Learning in the home. The frequency the parent and student completed the strategies in the home were recorded by the parent on an intervention log designed by the researcher. The log only required parent initials, so parents could prioritize their time for working toward the identified learning target. The recorded dose provided information about the number of sessions completed. However, it is important to note that parent reports may have overestimated frequency and duration. Using random sampling, 3 parents were interviewed by the primary researcher about the PTAT intervention. 7 open-ended questions were asked and responses transcribed by the researcher. The teacher was also interviewed, and 8 open-ended questions were asked and responses transcribed by the researcher. Approximately 60% of test score variance can be attributed to a student's family and cultural background, and family educational culture has strong associations with student engagement. These findings suggested a need to engage the LGM community in designing educational solutions for their children that included culturally informed approaches. Previous attempts to work with community members operated from a deficit model, aligning with research. Further, assumptions influencing the way business was done in schools included educators holding expertise that parents and community members did not have, and that students' needs should be identified and addressed by teachers and other professionals. Parents in low socioeconomic schools may be viewed as a problem rather than as a resource to improve learning, and this school fell in the bottom quartile of average family income in the province every year since the program opened. Moving to an instructional model that sought to redesign learning experiences and increase teacher-administrator capacity to engage families was viewed as the appropriate response to the challenges facing this particular student population. Efficacy, opportunities for involvement, school communication strategies, and context can be barriers to engage parents and community organizations in education. Nevertheless, strategies to connect parents and community to schools can increase involvement, which have numerous positive learning outcomes. Strengthening current parent and community involvement practices can assist students in attaining their learning goals. Attendance. Courses designed to enhance parental ability to assist their child's school performance correlate with improved attendance, as well as improved graduation rates. Students with involved parents are more likely to graduate from high school and attend post-secondary schools. Academic achievement. Involvement, high expectations, and encouragement from parents are significant predictors of academic achievement. Academic engagement is associated with parental involvement, specifically reading achievement for all students and mathematics achievement for low-performing students. Students demonstrate help-seeking behaviors and self-monitoring of work more frequently in school when parents discuss academic tasks, enhancing their opportunities for success. Context. Some parents need efficacy support for involvement, and schools are in a position to positively influence beliefs related to the importance of parents engaging in learning endeavors. The level of community and parental involvement practices initiated by teachers in schools varies, and providing a supportive framework establishes actionable measures. Community and parent involvement. Schools should not be separated from the community they serve. However, they are often removed from supportive external organizations. And economically disadvantaged school community partners can provide material, financial, and social support that would otherwise be unavailable. Community school partnership may result in increased social capital for students. Expert community members can improve student learning through forming relationships as well as building civic capacity. Parents from low socioeconomic backgrounds have revealed from their perspective poor communication and a lack of empathy from school personnel as a barrier to involvement. Parents living in low socioeconomic conditions have a lower likelihood of volunteering or participating in their children's schools, or providing family resources, reading material, or a study area. However, low socioeconomic parents indicate a strong desire to be involved. Parent perception of the opportunities and solicitations for school involvement are influential. This case study also uses a quasi-experimental mixed methods design. However, for the purposes of this isolated case of a single school's success, the focus was on the qualitative data collected through teacher and parent interviews. This approach allowed the researcher to gain a deeper understanding of context and impact. Semi-structured interviews were conducted with 1 teacher and 3 parents. Interviews were digitally recorded and transcribed and lasted approximately 30 minutes. Hermeneutic methods, including constant comparative method and thematic narrative analysis, were used to identify manifest and latent meaning in the data. Coding for analysis of the qualitative data was inductively generated by identifying categories within the text segments, from which a codebook was developed. Member checks were conducted with the teacher and parents who were interviewed. The findings established collaborative partnerships between parent and school, results in improved parental involvement, and cognitive, emotional, and behavioral engagement. The implementation of PTAT resulted in increased parental involvement and student engagement from both the parent and teacher perspective. Qualitative data was gathered from parent and teacher interviews and intervention logs to answer the questions: what is the relationship between teachers' perceptions of parental involvement as a result of PTAT participation, and what is the relationship between parents' perceptions of the teacher-parent relationship as a result of PTAT participation. The 4 research questions included: number 1, what is the relationship between students' engagement and parental participation in PTAT? Number 2, what is the relationship between students' perceptions of parental engagement and PTAT participation? Number 3, what is the relationship between teachers' perceptions of the teacher-parent relationship as a result of PTAT participation? Number 4, what is the relationship between parents' perceptions of the teacher-parent relationship as a result of PTAT participation? The teacher and 3 parents were interviewed to explore the feelings, impressions, patterns, and perceptions of context. During the analysis of the qualitative data, 83 codes were identified, formulating 6 themes. These included parent engagement, teacher engagement, communication, parent efficacy, teacher efficacy, and PTAT as a template for schools to involve parents. Parent engagement. All 3 parents noted during their respective interviews an increase in their understanding and involvement in their child's schoolwork. Each expressed discussing and working with their children on vocabulary development and reading tasks in alignment with the goals established during the PTAT meetings. Teacher engagement. The teacher expressed that while she had desired to work with parents prior to the introduction of PTAT, she had become discouraged. The program rejuvenated her engagement in working with parents collaboratively. Communication. All parents expressed appreciation for the communication from the school. Interestingly, 2 parents felt it was increased. Although the amount of communication was not measured previously, the teacher believes the volume did not change. Rather, the way she communicated altered. Parent efficacy. Parent 1 was only able to read limited English and was using the school lessons to expand her own knowledge so she was able to help her daughter. This is significant for this family because as siblings moved through the school, strong resistance to any homework was expressed, to the point the children were forbidden to complete any school-related tasks at home. PTAT as a template for schools to involve parents. All 3 parents preferred the PTAT approach to conferences than student-led conferences or traditional parent-teacher conferences. The teacher felt that her work was more supported by parents and that she was not combating as much resistance to the education system in general. Creating a school that catered to the needs of this unique cultural group proved to successfully increase parent involvement and student engagement, in addition to the hard measures of attendance, dropout rates, and achievement scores. When students were fully integrated with heterogeneous Canadian students, retention in the public system was difficult, and future prospects for these students were compromised.
After examining the findings in both case studies, it becomes apparent that there are benefits and drawbacks to both heterogeneous student grouping and segregated groupings for tailored programs. There is no denying that specialized programs provide an array of benefits for various student populations. Every program possesses a unique combination of student benefits which seek alignment with the desired outcomes. However, the unintended consequences of specialized program may include many drawbacks of student segregation from the mainstream. These programs often operate at a slower pace than the mainstream, and therefore students run the risk of falling further and further behind if they remain on these isolated tracks. So, the question becomes, how do school systems blend the most effective elements of segregated student programs with the benefits and the beneficial structure of heterogeneous student grouping? The TED Talk video linked under Heterogeneous Classes and Learning discusses an innovative CTE program that integrates four core subjects and enrolls students from three different tiers of programming, from the highest university track AP students to those requiring significant learning supports. The Twitter feed from the Homogeneous LGM School showcases student work that is engaging and representative of the programming we would expect from public schools. Click on the picture to scroll through the school's posts.
Please find links to the video and the Twitter feed discussed in the Programs in Action slide in the assignment submission notes, as well as a link to the Google presentation connected in the voice thread. Thank you.
Carroll, Fullerton, and West, 2009, examined the effects of heterogeneous ability tracking within classrooms and find that student performance increases in a mixed ability setting. However, the findings also include many instances where students perform better with separate, tailored programs. Common characteristics of successful tailored programs emerged through this study, which identify effective approaches to blending the two models in order to maximize student achievement. By studying the seminal research of ability grouping experts such as Gammon 1992 and Castellano 2012, alongside the characteristics of successful specially tailored programs, patterns emerged that identified strategies to blend the approaches. It is also worth noting that programs that are homogeneous in one respect may be heterogeneous in another. For instance, in case study 2, all students belonging to the LGM community, but also displayed various ability levels. The overarching recommendations from this joint case study are for the designers and evaluators of separate, tailored programs to reflect on four foundational questions regarding the separation of students in the program. The first question asks if it is possible to blend mainstream students into the program or operating the program within the mainstream structure. Beginning with this question requires program designers and evaluators to consider alternative programs which may allow for more inclusive structure. Once it is determined that it is a separate structure and that will be the best option, the second question asks designers to evaluate and think about how the segregated time can be limited. Again, the purpose of this question is to ensure options other than total exclusion from the mainstream are considered. The third question asks whether there is a clear and realistic re-entry plan back into the mainstream. Too often these specialized programs enroll students without a game plan and timeline for re-immersion back into the mainstream. Detailing a re-entry plan will allow stakeholders to track student progress and make necessary adjustments to the pace and structure if student outcomes are not met. The fourth foundational question that should be considered asks the team to explicitly define what students are missing by being separated from the mainstream. Are they missing out on certain social experiences? Are there academic experiences or learning standards that students are not exposed to? Has an imbalance in cultural exposure been created? Asking these questions require program designers and evaluators to identify areas in which students may not be receiving adequate exposure to academic, social, and cultural experiences, and will prepare them for re-entry into the mainstream. Final thoughts. Clearly, there are advantages to specialized targeted programs. There is certainly a plethora of examples of positive outcomes from separated program design. However, to ensure achievement and equitable student experiences, questions need to be asked during the creation of such programs to ensure the same outcomes cannot be achieved through heterogeneous grouping, which can also be advantageous for learners. Because every school, community, and program are different, there is no universal answer to the perfect program design. But if leadership and stakeholders consider the foundational questions outlined in this presentation, the potential for successful program will increase. Thank you for your attention to our presentation.